yell that chant when I hear it. No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA. Oh boy. I think Billy Joe's train might be pretty proud they saw this. Oh, someone let up a joint. Okay.
Legalized cocaine, cigs inside.
Sweet, thanks. Hurt white feelings does not equal oppression.
Cigarettes inside! No more vapes! Only cigs!
Screw that.
Cigs inside!
What's up, man? It's good.
It's a stance, you know. Cigs inside! Amen to that, brother.
Hey, bro, I think you dropped that.
Gotta be below the waist, bro.
Don't be a sheep. Very true. I'm white and afraid of everything.
Smoking cigarettes. Like, we don't need you around anymore.
No Nazis. It's that fucking simple. Wait, what's race against the rich, not your sisters and brothers.
It's so good. You're gonna have to stack if you want to get up to us.
No. Our chapter could not be more honored to be hosting Charlie Kirk, founder and CEO of Turning Point USA, here on campus this evening. What an incredible turnout. Thank you all for coming.
You're welcome.
Throughout the last few weeks, you have supported such an important cause of upholding First Amendment free speech and offering opportunities for students to challenge what they believe in. We further express our sincere gratitude to the CSU Police Department and to Landmark Events for providing your services and support this evening and offering a safe venue for all of our attendees. Even at his young age, Charlie has appeared on Fox News, CNBC, and Fox Business News over 200 times. He is also a best-selling author, was the youngest speaker at the 2016 Republican National Convention, and was recently honored in Forbes 30 Under 30 list. Charlie is deeply passionate about why free market systems lead to free people, and is excited to share these ideals with you this evening. With that, I would like to invite you all to join me in welcoming Charlie Kirk to the stage.
Thank you for being here. Isabel's a superstar. The whole chapter here at Colorado State and all of our Turning Point leaders throughout the state of Colorado, thank you for all the hard work you're doing, fighting for freedom on college campuses where it's needed most. I commonly say college campuses have become a place where they want everyone to look different but think the same, right? And we're fighting for intellectual diversity. We're fighting for the idea that America is the greatest country in the history of the world, and that free enterprise is a good thing, must be better understood and defended on our college campuses. So I'm here to talk today about some topics that you may or may not be hearing in your lecture halls. We're going to have some good discussion, some debate and dialogue. Before I go any further, I have to do this because it's, or else I'm going to get a question about it. So just by a rule of political thumb, you should never associate radical groups outside that just decide to show up with the speaker that's speaking. So let me make perfectly clear, I totally disassociate and denounce all these radical groups that are ethno-national bull, can I swear, BS that they're trying to say out there. It's not who we are, it's not what I believe, it's not what Turning Point believes. And it's very funny, they say, oh Charlie, you must be an ethno-nationalist because these four people with no life showed up at your speech. And I say, wait a second. First of all, that's a bunch of nonsense. Second of all, I don't remember anyone saying that when, like, all the communists show up to Democrat events. They don't say, you know, oh, she must be a communist because, you know, all these communists are showing up. So anyway, totally denounce, unequivocally say that there's no place for those ideas. They have a right to speak. They have a right to make fools of themselves. It's not who I am. It's not who we are. So we can start with that clearly. So I'm a conservatarian. I think it's a new breed of political philosophy that is growing quickly amongst millennials. I'm going to kind of go through a checklist of exactly what that means, and we might have some more conservatarians in this audience than we might even imagine, right? So what does it mean? There's actually a couple things, and I'll walk through a series of questions, and you can answer them however you see fit, and I'll tell you how I came to my own political philosophy. I grew up a Republican, not a conservative. I grew up a Republican because that's just what you were. I was the kid in class that was always debating my teacher. When she said horrible things about George W. Bush, I just felt inclined I had to debate differently. And then I started to read, and I started to better understand, and this idea of more conservative philosophy versus just Republican political philosophy became a lot more attractive to me. Throughout my junior and senior in high school, I started to come across the great books of F.A. Hayek and Ludwig von Mises and Milton Friedman, and I started to better understand the great ideas that created Western civilization and a free society, free trade, and free enterprise. And the libertarian ideas started to come to be very attractive to me. But at the same time, I believe strongly in the rule of law and preserving really what has created, the Western society. And I said, what if there's this new idea and this new concept that really brings both the best ideas of the conservative belief of thought and the libertarian belief of thought together, and that's where that term conservatarian comes from. So here's a list of questions for those of you that may not even know what that means or how I came to them. First and foremost, the most important question in philosophy and politics in general that I think just comes to the very core, which will immediately separate half this room, maybe half this room, I don't know, half the people here and half not. And it's very simple. Are people good? Are people inherently good? This is a fundamental question for politics and philosophy. And the question is, of course people aren't good. Are you kidding me? We have to teach goodness to our infants. We have to tell our babies to stop crying. We have to tell our 3-year-olds to stop hitting each other. In our normative, natural state, we're broken. If you believe in God or not, we'll get to that later. But I believe we're broken by sin upon birth. Therefore, goodness is a virtue that must be taught. It must be expressed. It's a moral code that we have to tell our young people and our children from a very, very young age. Some we do better than others. The second question you have to ask, and you can kind of go through their checklist. By the way, people who think people are, if you think people are inherently good, that'll immediately put you in a camp a lot different than where a conservative libertarian worldview will come from. Secondly, are people perfectible? It's a very important question. Do you believe the human condition can be perfected? Do you think with the right influences, governmental or non-governmental, that we can actually come to a place where human action can be perfected, where the greed and the racism and the sexism and the homophobia and all that can eventually be completely removed from our society? I would say there's been no evidence to suggest that we can be perfectible as human beings. In fact, we're broken by nature, and no matter how much goodness we get taught to us, we will continue to be sinful. We will continue to lie and cheat and steal. Even the most virtuous person on planet Earth imaginable still had their fair share of sins. And so then I would argue the next question would be, if you don't believe people are bad, and you believe people are not perfectible, then a reasonable goal would be then we should try to make people better, right? We should try to at least get them as close to perfection as possible. Here's the killer question. Should government do it? That's the question. And I say absolutely not. I say government has no place in socially engineering its citizens. Government's role is to protect our natural rights, which I'll get to in a second. Government's role is to make sure that government doesn't first and foremost come after us. Because the #1 abuser of human freedom in the history of the world, not capitalists, not the millionaires and billionaires, it's government. It's government. It's government. Our founders understood this, and it's what has preserved most of Western culture, is that there are checks and balances against bad people, because as I said earlier, people are inherently bad, getting too much power to exert it over other people. That's why we have separation of powers. So if you do believe people are bad and you think you should try to perfect individuals, but you don't think government should do it, well, let's pretend you say, actually, no, Charlie, I think government should do it. I think things are good when we come together, and I believe in a collective. Let's play that out. Well, then here's the next question. Do you really trust the government? Come on, you can't possibly trust this government. It's bought by the wealthy, the few, and the well-connected. It's inherently corrupt, spying on our own citizens and our president, which we know today, thanks to the release of the memo, by the way. Glad the memo's out. Good stuff. How can you possibly trust a government that lies and cheats and steals? Because remember, government is just comprised of people. Government does not inherently become good because you have a bunch of people in a room and you slap a sticker on them, right? It's still broken people that are imperfectible in a room that are sinful by nature that will use unlimited power against the citizens. So absolutely you should not trust the government. See, as a conservatarian, those that are conservatives or libertarians, we should be always skeptical of governmental power. Shouldn't let government spy on us. Shouldn't let government police our speech. Shouldn't let government take our guns. Shouldn't let government tell us what to believe. Shouldn't let government in our churches. Really shouldn't let government in our private schools. And it goes one after the other, and you see the #1 abuse of power. The abuse of human rights and freedoms around the world is when too much power gets concentrated too quickly in the hands of too few people. And that is why we as conservatarians do not trust the government. But you might ask, Charlie, but what, you name all these things, speech, and guns, yeah, guns, that's really medieval of you, Charlie. You say, well, what does that mean? Well, let's go through that. We as conservatarians believe in natural rights. Okay? So we believe this next question, that's the answer to this next question. It's like Jeopardy. I'll say the answer and then I ask the question. Where do rights come from? Right? So if you have any belief in the right to free speech or the right to bear arms or the right to privacy, the idea of where do your rights come from? You heard since you were in 4th grade, well, I have a right to speak freely. Fair enough, you're right. Who gave you that right? Was it a government bureaucrat in D.C.? Was it someone down the street at the state capitol? Was it someone in City Hall? No, 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 no. They are bestowed upon you upon birth. They are natural. Every human being has rights from birth and upon death. Essentially, no one can take those away. See, you have the ability, the capacity, the freedom to speak freely as long as it doesn't harm someone else, which is where the more conservative part of the libertarian worldview comes in. And so you say, where do rights come from? I believe rights come from God, which comes to the next question. Do you believe in God? I do believe in God, actually. If you don't believe in God, that's fine. The rise of atheism on college campuses troubles me, and we could talk about that in the question and answer. I think the more secular society gets, the farther away it gets from the true Judeo-Christian construct that helped create Western society and Western civilization, and that really troubles me. Secondly, back to natural rights. This is beautifully articulated in the Bill of Rights, where the Founding Fathers studied human history, and this is something we're going to talk about. The Constitution was not written for the times, it was written to stand the test of time. And say that again. The Constitution was not written for the times, it was written to stand the test of time. So the next question I'll ask you is, do you think human beings are all that different today than how they were in 1770? The answer is absolutely no. The level of evil
we haven't changed at all since the Stone Age.
At all. And you might say, well, Charlie, they used to own slaves. You're right. There was a lot of evil in the world, and there was evil that we tolerated. But you know what? There's a lot of evil right now that we still tolerate in our world that they're going to look back 100 years from now. Can you believe what they allowed to have happen in their society back in 2018? So don't think for a second that we can be morally sanctimonious, look back at the Founding Fathers and say, oh, human beings are so much better and more refined and in a better state of nature than we were 250 years ago. But the Founding Fathers realized upon a study of every successful and inevitably ruined civilization, as they found commonality, would be the Roman civilization, the Greek Empire, the British Empire, and the Asian empires, Chinese Empire in particular, that human beings are actually rather predictable creatures. Is that they're going to do everything they possibly can to form a small group of influential people behind a charismatic leader to take total unilateral political control and exercise that control amongst 99.9% of all the citizens and be oppressive and be repressive and steal their goods and their services, and everyone will stay poor except the wealthy, the few, and the well-connected in an oligarchy. The Founding Fathers saw this. They said there's something really, really horrible and evil and morally wrong about this, and instead of creating a pseudo-monarchy where George Washington would become king until he died and handed off and still you had some form of rights and citizens, they said, we are going to blow this mother effer up, and we are going to do something that's never ever been done before in human history. We are going to create a document that says not what the human beings can do, but what government can't do to its human beings. Never before in a governmental document had that been done. Now, it's been talked about a little bit in the Magna Carta, talked about a little bit before the Declaration of Independence, but this was the law. This is what the government had to live by, first and foremost. And you see it in the Bill of Rights. Number one, the right to say what you want to say as long as it hurts someone else. That's the First Amendment. That is timeless. Okay? People say, well, the First Amendment shouldn't apply to shouldn't apply to nowadays. Well, look. Should your right to expression diminish just because technology improves? Absolutely not. And so what they realize is that you are given particular natural rights upon birth, and that is, of course, life and your freedom and your pursuit of happiness, of course, articulated in the founding documents. And what's so interesting about it is they said, all right, what are the individual specific ways government can take those rights away? Well, they'll try to silence the citizens. First Amendment, boom, put it right in, hard stop. You can say what you want to say. You can criticize your government. You know, they used to arrest people for that back before the revolution, right? Well, the other thing the founding fathers realized is, you know what? We need some sort of check and balance that the citizens cannot be overpowered by their government. Now, this is a widely unpopular view by half of America right now because they think I'm some sort of conspiracy theorist. But you know what? The founding fathers quite frankly understood that the people needed weaponry to defend themselves against a usurpatious government. And you look throughout the 20th century, it is riddled with hundreds of millions of dead bodies because government got way too powerful and the people were disarmed. The Founding Fathers understood this. Our Second Amendment is not just for hunting. Hunting's awesome. It's not just to protect against home invasion. I'm totally supportive of that. It's not just so that women can have a great equalizer against men, which I'm very supportive. It's so that free people can defend themselves if government, God forbid, ever gets too powerful to try to come after us for our freedoms and liberties. There is no First Amendment without the Second Amendment. I will defend that. I will defend that tonight as well. Finally, you go through without getting through every amendment. You look at the Fourth Amendment. Very important. The Founding Fathers realized that everyone needed a right to privacy, which of course reinforced this idea of private property rights. And the Founding Fathers need to stay out of poverty. Number one, you have to graduate high school. Number two, you have to get married before you have kids. Number three, you have to get a job. Those three things, and not commit crimes, that should go without saying. But you do those three basic things in America, you will get rewarded. And only in a free market basis. Must be nice to get all of your government revenues from something that they say they oppose, which is natural gas and fracking, which a primary source of their government funding comes from fracking. And they have universal school choice in Sweden, which I fully support. But also, those countries are 8 million apiece, and you know what? They have a 65% tax rate on the wealthiest citizens. That's not a country I want to live in. So if you want to go there, nonstop from Denver to Stockholm, every other day. So feel free. I have no interest to have that discussion. The other thing I'll say is just because you don't like the country you live in, don't change it. Leave. That's the other thing I'll say. Because we are not that philosophical. Mind you, they say the Republicans are the racist, not diverse ones. You got Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, 2 out of only 4 ever Hispanics to run for the President of the United States. The first ever Indian American to run for President of the United States in Bobby Jindal. You have Dr. Ben Carson, one of the only African Americans ever to run for President of the United States. You had 3 total Spanish speakers if you count Low Energy Jet. And if you just look at the ages, right? If you want to say, oh, well, it's an old, rich party. Well, the Democrat Party had 0 people running under the age of 50. The Republican Party had 6 people that were running under the age of 50. You look at the makeup of Congress. Nancy Pelosi is, I don't know how old she is. Keep going, Nancy. We're cheering for you. Paul Ryan is the youngest Speaker of the House since 1859. The Republican, until Cory Booker got his seat in the New Jersey Senate, Tim Scott was the only African American senator in the United States Senate. The GOP right now has the most senators under the age of 50 ever in the history of the country. And you look at the amazing makeup of what the Republican Party has done, you know, racially, ethnically diverse, and this idea that it's a racist old party, the facts just don't stand up to that at all. And you look at the contrary to the Democrats, you know, they have Nancy and Chuck. Good luck. You know, and our party is a party of true diversity and true intellectual diversity and disagreement, and it's something that needs to be better understood and better appreciated. So, thank you for the question. Legalization of marijuana. Wonderful. I think we need more studies, more laboratories of democracy, more states to see what works and what doesn't work. Let's talk about your point about this incarceration, because I'll actually disagree with you. I think we have the wrong prisoners in prison. Okay? So if I ask the audience, the average convicted rapist spends how long in prison? Anyone want to guess? Convicted rapist. 3.5 years. If you rape someone, you should be castrated and put in prison forever, your entire life. I don't care. If you rape someone, you should be in prison for your whole life. Hard stop. Convicted of rape in our court system, you should not be a functioning member of society. Convicted of rape. Okay? Same with murder. So, do you agree with that? Like you said, as much as I agree with it, we would have 14.5 million prisoners, my friend. And we would have way more prisoners than you're complaining about. We don't have enough prisoners. We have too many psychos walking our streets. You know how long the average murderer spends? 3rd-degree murder? 9.5 years. Arson? 8 years. I mean, like, hold on a second. When you commit those crimes, when you go that far to intentionally try to harm someone or kill someone, lock it up and throw the key away. Now, if you're arrested for marijuana crimes or this, that's totally different. Those are non-violent crimes. Get rid of mandatory minimums. We can alleviate that. But this idea that we have too many prisoners, hold on a second. We don't have the right prisoners in there. We do not have the right prisoners in there. And we have these horrible trial lawyers and judges that are loose with the law that obfuscate facts and falsify testimony, and that's why we have these maniacs walking our streets, and we're so worried why we have a sexual assault crisis in this country.
And what if cops that feel so threatened by old women in their homes that they have to shoot?
simultaneous legalization of marijuana. And I grew up in a high school that was infested with drugs, with the strictest drug laws, with police officers with drugs walking around all the time. Now, there's people on both sides of the argument that say that Colorado's better because of it and Colorado's worse of it. That's actually I'm not an expert on. I'm going to play total neutral, and I want to learn more about it. I don't think it really matters. I think that you should not be socially engineering. You should actually be talking about how to have people make better choices. Just because you legalize something doesn't mean you have to do it. I sent out a tweet the other day. You don't like weed, don't smoke it. You don't like alcohol, don't drink. You don't like guns, don't buy one. Like, that's what freedom's about.
Yes.
It's the freedom to buy something. It's the freedom not to do something as well. And I would say it's a failure that we spend so much on these mandatory minimums and this mandatory war on drugs. I think it's being on the wrong side of history, and also it's arguing for a bigger government, which is something I don't necessarily agree with. When it comes to other drugs, harder drugs, cocaine, methamphetamines, I need to do more thinking and really looking at it. My argument would be you can legally overdose on that, so that might be a better argument, but I'll have a better articulated answer to that in a little bit. But look, that should be a non-starter, because first of all, marijuana should be declassified as a Category 1 drug, which it is, by the FBI, which is ridiculous, and the Drug Enforcement Administration. And you should be allowed to deposit proceeds from legal marijuana sales into FDIC-insured banks, which you currently cannot do. I love this administration. I love this president. Totally disagree with what they're doing on marijuana. I think they're doing it. Thank you for your question. Thank you. Better identify with your value system, and no one's preventing you from going there. We are a country of risk takers, of upward thinkers, of entrepreneurs, and ambitious people. And I believe we should do everything we possibly can to continue a culture of that sort of set of ideas, and not try to embrace social welfare democracy, where we try to hand out the most goods and services to the most amount of people. That's essentially what I'm saying.
So my thought on that is, like, kind of the point of America, and as you spoke about on the 10th Amendment earlier, is that you can change things for the better of people if you want. So that's why I was kind of just taken aback by what you said.
Well, I don't say they have to leave. I say you should leave. I'm saying that you're trying to change a country from within. That's really troubling to me. Don't try to reconstruct our values. Don't try to redefine us. That's really disturbing. When we have a set of ideas that have been the most successful in human history, and then you have outside influences that want to do that, again, you have a right to have those ideas, you have a right to practice those. I'm doing everything I can to persuade the most amount of people possible, but I'm also like, you seem really unhappy. Wouldn't you be happier somewhere else? Like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe Copenhagen would be a better city for you. Maybe that would just work out better for you, but of course they have the right to do it. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm very happy living in a capitalist country, like really happy, and other people seem super, super unhappy. If America ever became a super socialist country, like super socialist, then yeah, I would find somewhere else where I could be a capitalist. It doesn't make sense why a socialist would no one's keeping you here, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. And then the second question was when you talked about how socialism killed a lot of people.
Yes.
So socialism killed a lot of people in their own countries, and I don't think socialism is the answer. But I just wanted to throw a thought your way. How many people has capitalism killed? And how many people have we as America, like in Vietnam, civilians in all over Europe during World War II and all that, how many people have we killed?
A lot, yeah. But, I mean, you want to talk about U.S. foreign policy, happy to. So I would say some of the horrible civilian deaths in World War II were unfortunately justified for the complete destruction of the Nazi Empire. War is a really disgusting, horrible thing that should be prevented at all costs. Believe it or not, we're living in the most peaceful time in human history.
What?
Large in part, every statistic shows it, so you guys can doubt it, but that's fine. We're living in the most peaceful time in human history, and it's large in part thanks to the permanent American military presence all around the world, and it's an unpopular position to have, something that's the less libertarian side of my philosophy, and the more conservative side. Unfortunately, certain pockets of the world are very susceptible to ethno-nationalist dictators taking power, causing a mess that America eventually has to clean up. I'm talking about Asia and Europe, and we have successfully stemmed all conflict in those continents over the last 60 years since we've had a permanent American military presence. America's made a lot of mistakes internationally. Vietnam was a mess, Iraq was a mistake, Afghanistan was a mistake. If we wanted to go after the real actors against 9/11, we should have went after Saudi Arabia, who financed and actually led the charge. And no one talks about it. I'll agree with you. But I will say not all military incursions were made the same. I would say the Korean War was actually a very big success. It's Americans' forgotten war. 50,000 Americans died, but they didn't die for nothing. They died to push back communism off the Korean Peninsula that created one of the most prosperous countries in the world, which is South Korea. There would be no South Korea. There would be no Olympics coming up in next week if it wasn't for America and Americans doing something that was wildly unpopular at the time and fighting the communists back to the parallel that they're at now. And so America has been a net positive with our interventions, but not all the interventions were good. Iraq was a rational made a rational decision with motives that were not in our best interest. Same with Afghanistan, same with Vietnam, same with what we did in Mogadishu, so on and so forth. So I think you'll find a lot of receptiveness with me on that. As far as how many lives has capitalism killed, would you mind better defining that? Do you mean people that were under the society of capitalism, or do you mean just like capitalism in general?
So like our military is a capitalist enterprise. We created in World War II to supplement our factories and to better push us forward in terms of economical standing in the world. So
That's
we use those
unique argument, but
we
yeah.
use those bombs all over the world. And the civilian casualties in Vietnam outweighed all of those in World War II.
Sure, with napalm and all that. But so, look, I would say that America's military is capitalist. Capitalist means you have to have a couple things. Remember, private property. Is there any private property in the American military?
Lockheed Martin, it's a good example.
Yeah,
right here in
it's a
Colorado.
privately held company that has non-bid contracts to the U.S. government. Prices, nothing is bidded out in the American military. It's all just like whatever you want, it gets fulfilled, right? And then the other one is the profit motive. I mean, it's sorely left.
Again, makes a lot of money.
Again, and Lockheed Martin is a private company which should have competition for American military contracts, which I have a big disagreement with. So the point being is it a capitalist thing? No, it's cronyist. Big difference. Big difference. They're using government favor to benefit themselves. See, capitalist would actually be competition. We'd have an open bidding contract for government contracts and government prices, so on and so forth. I actually agree with where you're coming from on this, believe it or not. I think that the U.S. military should have a lot more competition with how we bid out and how we actually gauge and judge success. There's so much waste in the U.S. military; it is incomprehensible.
Yes.
So I agree with you on that. And but more kind of geopolitically, it's an unpopular position. But if America was not present in some of these regions of the world, I would argue the world would be a more dangerous place.
All right, I'll let you move on.
Thank you very much. I think there's in here, but if you need to film it, that's cool too.
Yeah, I do. All right, so Mr. Kirk, I saw this flyer about you the other day, because I got.
It must be true.
Oh, well, it says, Fort Collins turns away Turning Point USA. No bigotry, no ethnocentrism, no jingoism, no nationalism, no racism, no xenophobia, no Turning Point USA, and no Charlie Kirk. Seeing stuff like that and all the protesters outside smoking fat-ass blunts right outside the LSC, like when you see stuff like that, things about you, people hating you like that, well, how does that make you feel?
That's actually a great question. I thought you were going to, ask about something else. Because you're reading off the flyer. So, look. Here's all I can say. If really in this country you have to resort to those kind of isms and ists about me, which is so patently false and terribly untrue, that is one of the most intellectually lazy and dangerous approaches to politics. You're seeing it more and more in modern society. I disagree, therefore that person is a racist. I disagree, therefore that person hates women. I disagree, therefore that person is an elitist and a sexist, blah, 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 blah. Well, you know what? Come here and have a discussion and have a disagreement, that's fine. But don't spread that propaganda, but you know what it means? It means we're making an impact. It means we're winning. And I'm not sick of it yet. And
one more thing, Mr. Kirk. I gotta say, I'm pleasantly surprised by the things that we both agree with tonight. I have to ask you this. I've come to believe that America needs like a third or fourth or fifth main party, like a multi-party system, not just the Democrats and Republicans representing us every year at the elections. Like 2016 was my first year voting, and I was not pleased with the main two.
Understandable. I will agree as soon as the Democrat Party splinters into the Socialist Party and the Democrat Party, and then it will make a lot more sense. But the problem is it's going to be who blinks first. If the Republicans splinter, Democrats are going to control everything, and they're going to be in total monopoly of control. So it's going to be a question of who blinks first. Principally, I agree with you that we have a country of 330 million people that are represented by two viewpoints, and a lot of those viewpoints are not exactly always widely held. You're right that you make a great observation. The problem is, as I'm kind of here, I'm like, wow, I don't agree with a lot of these Republicans and what they're doing. I don't agree with the Republican Party a lot of what they're doing. But oh boy, if we hand the keys over to the opposition, we're going to be sitting during the national anthem. For God's sakes, the State of the Union. You know, I mean, So that's the problem I have, you understand? But I think we need more diversity of ideas in political parties. And look, I think the two-party system is something that was warned about by the founding fathers, actually, you know.
It was.
No, I know.
George Washington was an independent for a reason.
See, I was trying to assume, you know, ignorance, and you have to. See, I'm kidding. You're doing great. So I agree with you, my friend. I think we need more ideas, but it should not be the Republicans that blink first. As soon as the Democrats start to split, which they will, then we can have other principled leaders come and pop up. So good observation there. Thanks for the right.
Exactly. Do you know?
I missed the good stuff, damn it.
Exactly. That's why I'm representing it.
Wait, hey,
Who did?
hey, excuse me, sir. You said you were jumped by neo-Nazis? Is that what I heard?
He was jumped by Springs.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Supposedly.
Trump stickers.
And we never heard about it.
Truck followed me home, jumped me in front of my 1-year-old daughter in the car.
Oh,
Yeah, got them both arrested.
Good. That's not okay.
Koyar is their last name.
Coyards?
Yes, Koyar.
Because I heard you're a prick.
Sam Koyar, oldest.
Because I don't know you.
All right, well, I'm happy they're behind bars.
They're not anymore. They got a misdemeanor assault.
You gotta be kidding
Slap
me.
on the wrist. Just like all these other fucking white supremacist cunts. They get protected and they get all the
Am I the
extras.
local white nationalist? Let's get pictures of the half fucking white nationalist. Okay, cool.
Honestly, that's kind of what I came to see.
You look like Willy Wonka. Just got
Those good pictures.
That's really tough.
Hey, dude, I just want, excuse me, you said that voting doesn't do shit. Whoa, what can?
Extreme action.
We're doing that right now.
Extreme action? You want revolution?
Okay, so what happens when the electoral?
Alright. They were just making a weird chant. What did they say?
I don't know, but I know what they're about.
Anti-white? I thought they were like white supremacists.
Basically, I think what they're saying, don't ask me how I know all of this.
Yeah.
Basically, what I think they're doing is saying that people who are anti-racist, what they would be saying is that anti-racist is code for anti-white.
A smart man just told me, open mouth lets in flies.
You got it right. You serve capitalism. You serve global capitalism. 10 years ago,
You listen to this guy, man?
protests a war and against globalism. Now the globalism is against white people. You're for it. You are against white people because you love the global order. You love the global capitalist order. You are its servant.
You're getting all this, right?
You are its slave. You are its stooge.
is.
You think it's funny? You think it's funny?
Yeah, I do. I think your ideology is a joke.
Really? Get the fuck out of here. You know, I'm staying where I am. This is wrong. What are you here? You're fucking kidding me?
Fucking flag up.
Call the comes out. This is our country.
No, it's not. This is our country. It's indigenous fucking country.
Okay, we should. There was that nice guy we just saw. We should probably be heading.
Yeah, let's go. Well, we didn't get to film the last bit of it because the police showed up, actually shut it down, and people were like actually fighting in the streets, and someone like, well, there were some racial slurs, and yeah, it was a pretty tense moment. A lot of prayers for people tonight. And the overall event, Charlie Kirk, I honestly have very mixed feelings towards socialism. Like, I'm not against it. Like, I know it's worked well for a lot of other countries, but just like, I just don't think it worked for the United States. Just in my 2 cents. And yeah, I think again when we were actually talking to Charlie Kirk when he was presenting to us, like I didn't film the whole thing, just because I didn't want the video to go on for too long. But yeah, he brought a lot of really interesting points. Like he explained why America is the greatest country in the world, and like someone asked him about white privilege, and he thinks it's he went on like, oh, it's a myth. Like the wealthiest demographic are the Asians and the Indians, and like. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically the Charlie Kirk event was great. There were some issues I took with, some things I took issue with, excuse me. Just for one thing, calling George III, who ruled the U.S. before the Revolution, calling him totalitarian, which I just think is ridiculous. But,
yeah, if I didn't film that, I apologize.
But, yeah, I mean, I agree with 85% of what he said. And it was a good time. It was good to learn, and it did remind me. And honestly, Vitas will disagree, but the one thing I take the least issue with is that the U.S. is the greatest country in the world.
I just feel like that's very biased because, like, I have a friend who lives in Nottingham in England, and like, I'm not gonna tell her like, oh, America is better than England, you should move to it. Like, no, she's perfectly happy in that part of the world. I think that's the important thing. Like, if a country, like, if you're living a good, solid life in wherever you're living, like, you don't need to move.
Yeah, that's another thing I took issue with. Like, if you don't like how it is in the United States, you can move. Nobody's stopping you. I'm like, there are a ton of things stopping you. And that's the thing. I've lived outside the United States. In fact, I've lived more time outside the United States than inside of it. So I understand there are other countries, and other countries are great and have a lot to offer. But the U.S. is awesome, and he talked about free market, and I agree. It's like free market has given us a quality of life that we could not have even dreamed of in another era. Like, I'm just looking at this table right here, like, neither of us are 1%ers, and yet there are 2 laptops and 2 phones between the 2 of us. And if I had my laptop here, there would be 3 laptops. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
The clips, since Mac is stupid and I can't upload my clips of this computer, I gotta use that one to do so. This is like what I use for school back days or everything else.
Yeah, and then, so once that was over, then came the question and answer time, and I don't really like question and answer too much because, first off, I find that most people don't really care about what you have to say, and honestly, people ask questions, and there were a lot of questions people asked that I feel like he kind of skirted around, like he didn't really answer, like he didn't really have an answer.
This one girl asked about environmentalism.
Yeah.
And how our economy's based on fossil fuels and ultimately stuff that's gonna screw over the environment even more.
And basically, she said, well, the Mississippi caught fire under the Nixon administration because of not enough environmental oversight, and he started, basically making fun of the idea that the whole Mississippi could catch on fire. And I was like, no, you're missing the point. So
a bull shark could probably swim all the way up to the Mississippi River, but a fire, nah.
Yeah, it's just like, come on, that's not what she meant. That's not what she was saying. So again, question and answer. I don't find it useful, and again, I'm not saying other people shouldn't. I just don't find it useful because I don't think it's very conducive to learning, because you have to ask one question, which is usually a loaded question, and then whoever's answering has to distill it down to something so just trite and meaningless. And meanwhile, you have people cheering in every other direction, so it's not really an unbiased exchange of ideas. Once Vitas asked this question, I was like, okay, I'm out of here. I have no reason to stay here anymore. But I think it's what happened after the events that we really want to talk about.
Oh yeah, the white supremacists showed up, the anti-fascists were outside, and there was these lunatic communists. I don't even know what they were. They were wearing gas masks for whatever reason. Yeah, it was a really crazy event. We live in a very troubled time. I will say that right now. And I feel like it's going to get worse.
As Green Day says, we live in troubled times.
We're blasting American idiot after this.
Yeah, basically we walk outside and there's Antifa, and there's one guy holding, the Antifa flag, and he's arguing with a couple of guys who I would say, pretty run-of-the-mill conservatives, smaller governments, all that jazz, pretty run-of-the-mill. So then basically we stand there for a while, because honestly, that's kind of exciting to watch.
Yeah, it's very exciting to watch, even when there's fists being thrown.
And then we walk away and thank you. And I think that this was the case. Vitas had his wheels parked a little bit further away, so we had to walk a little further away and then walk. Okay, basically we walked to where his trike was parked, then kind of walked back towards where the Antifa was, and then started walking away. And as we're walking away, I see, I'm not sure what it's called, but I saw this group of people all clad in black. They had this symbol. It's like a Greek cross around a circle. And
almost a bullseye sort of thing.
It's a white supremacist symbol. So I said, "Oh my goodness, we have to see this. This is once in a lifetime. I don't know if we're going to be able to see this ever again." So we go up there, and then there are these Jersey barriers set all around the plaza, which aren't usually there. And basically, the Antifa stand stood on one side, and the white supremacists stood on the other side, and basically just yelling at each other and essentially chanting one phrase. Yeah, anyway. And the police kind of got the message that things were about to go down, so they got up around there and were like, they were just, we're here. And then after a while, they said, this is an unlawful assembly. You all must vacate. Like in Skyrim when you're trying to steal the Talos amulet from, what's it called, Marthal, the big city of stone.
I'm thinking about the one where, the Imperial Legion one, where we had to steal the note from that lady.
I'm thinking of the one basically one of the Markthal, the one that's on the west of the map.
Yeah.
It's all built in city, and anyway, it's there when you're trying to steal the Talos amulet, and when the guard says, "You're trespassing here, you'd better clear out." Essentially, kind of like that, except a lot more forceful, and you knew that if everything went to hell, you couldn't just start the game again. So that's when we decided it'd be a better idea to get out of here. And when the white supremacists first showed up, there was hardly anybody there. But then as both sides started getting angrier, people were crowding around, and the police were just like, "You guys gotta get going, you guys gotta get going, you guys gotta get going." And then basically people started walking away and clearing out, and everyone was, walking at a brisk pace, because you hear that from the police and you don't sit around to see if it's true. And then basically I say, "Hey, is there a guy with pink hair in there? I'm with him." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that guy. He asked a great question during the event." It's like, "Oh, all right." So props to Vitas for dyeing his hair a memorable color. Anywho, so then, basically by now, it's weird because the white supremacists and Antifa are sort of walking in a crowd, they're walking in a blob, just yelling at each other, as close as we are right now to each other.
Yeah, with a freaking barrier between them, which honestly
but then when they leave, when the police tell them to clear out, they're just walking and there's nothing between them. They're basically just walking in a big crowd and they're all yelling at each other. And so the police, they finally come to one perimeter and are like, "Okay, this is kind of where we're going to stop." it doesn't look like it's going to escalate, so we'll kind of let it go from here. So yeah, we walked behind them, just think about, oh my goodness, this is, when are we going to get to see something like this again?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then they started, the white supremacists started, yeah, I know this is a weird place to finally to say, okay, stop, but they started yelling racial slurs, I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah, I had to resist every trying to join into the yelling and say my own 2 cents, but this guy said, open mouth, you're just letting in flies.
Open mouth lets in flies, yeah. Well, okay, I'm going to get philosophical for a second.
Yeah.
It's a very good thing, talk as little as you have to. I know I'm a huge hypocrite, I understand. But yeah, just basically there's a Spanish expression that's I think it's master of what you shut up about and slave of what you say. So basically, don't talk just so people don't really just so people can't peg you and decide where you are and then use that to attack you. Just don't. Just stay out of it. And yeah, I mean, then we walked away and it looks like it resolved itself peacefully, but I can't say for sure. I suppose we'll figure out tomorrow in the newspaper.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this video is getting really long, so we're just going to call it a night here. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe. And yeah, again, guys, we live in a very troubled time period. Just do what you know is right, be the change you want to see, and yeah, I think we can make the world a better place. Yeah.